जय जय श्री राधे श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय. Jai Shri Krishna. Today is the 9th day of recitation, starting with Shri Damodar Sambhalware, Part 6, Varta 3, Part 6. Damodar Das's father-in-law was wealthy. He employed 100 maidservants for his daughter's service, so she wouldn't have to do any lowly work. But his daughter still did her own work because it was related to her divine service. That was her devotional greatness. Part 7. Once Sri Acharyaji was taking rest at Damodar Das's Sambhalware's home. Damodar Das Sambhalware was pressing his feet. Sri Acharyaji asked him if he wanted anything. Damodar Das Sambhalware replied that, besides his grace, he required nothing. Sri Acharyaji then told him to ask the same question of his wife. When he asked her if there was anything that she had her heart set on, she told him that she really wanted to have a son. Damodar Das Sambhalware told Sri Acharyaji, who replied that she would certainly have one. After this, Sri Acharyaji travelled on to Jatipura, here also named as Srinathji Dwar. A short while afterwards she fell pregnant. Some time after this, a fortune-teller arrived in the town. All the ladies began to ask about their future, so they persuaded Damodar Das's wife to ask whether she would give birth to a son or a daughter. A girl went and asked him, and he replied that she would bear a son. Some time passed, and Sri Acharyaji again came to Kanauj. Damodar Das Sambhalware went to touch his guru's feet, but Sri Acharyaji forbade him for doing so, saying that he was guilty of disloyalty. Damodar Das implored that he could not understand this accusation. Sri Acharyaji suggested that he ask his wife. He did so, and she told him all about the fortune-teller and his prediction. Damodar Das Sambhalware went back to Sri Acharyaji, who then said that yes, a son would be born to her, but he would be a person of bad habits and faithless behaviour. Sri Acharyaji then returned to Adel. When Damodar Das's wife heard this, she stopped touching the Lord's food preparations and water, saying that if she had such a demonic being in her belly, she should not be touching the Lord's things. When she was about to give birth, she told her mother to take the child away as soon as it was born, because she didn't even want to see its face. The mother did exactly that and removed the child as soon as it was born. The boy was brought up by a maidservant. Bhav Prakash, the inner meaning explained. When Sri Acharyaji had come to Kanauj and asked Damodar Das Sambhalware if he had any heartfelt desire, it was all a test, because he knew that the latter's wife was fostering some inappropriate feelings which would keep her away from attaining the true fruit of the path of grace. Sri Acharyaji did not want Damodar Das Sambhalware to become tainted by her shortfalls. Damodar Das Sambhalware faith was full and pure. He only wanted to be able to serve his guru's feet. Sri Acharya did not speak to the wife directly. Her plea and his answer were made through Damodar Das himself. She had desires other than pure service. She had not requested a son who would be dedicated to and help in the service of the Lord, but only a son, and so it was evident to Sri Mahaprabhuji that she was not fully surrendered to the path, for she was serving but holding other desires in her heart and her mind. The poet Mukunda Das has written, whilst describing the Prahaladji story from the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, asking your guru to fulfill any selfish desire is tainted devotion. Expecting one's guru to grant worldly or scriptural wishes does not lead to the state of pure devotion. Sri Acharyaji granted the wife's wish for a son, and then moved on to Sri Giriraji to be close to Sri Govardhanaji. When she committed the offence of taking shelter elsewhere, Sri Acharyaji travelled on to Kanauj. There he did not allow Damodar Das Sambhalware to touch his feet, because he had been partaking of prasad prepared by her. It was in this way that he instructed Damodar Das Sambhalware. No other fault is as bad as disloyalty. Like in a marriage, if either partner dishonours the other by going with someone else, A striving Vaishnava should never rely on nor take refuge in anyone other than their Lord and their Guru, because this will destroy their entire Vaishnava dharma, or way of devotional life. When Damodar Das Sambhalware's wife realized this, she stopped touching the Lord's food offerings. Her disloyalty exited from her being through the boy's birth. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that a devotee's possessiveness should be directly, uniquely at the Lord. Otherwise the Lord will remove the other objects of affection from that devotee. Then knowledge and renunciation develop and total loyalty ensues. A person without a devotional character will lose that object of affection, but still be disloyal. Sri Acharyaji allowed the situation with his son to be played out because he regarded the wife as one of his own. The wife understood this lesson and blindfolded herself at the time of birth so as not to even espy her son's face. The mother took the son home. When he was about 10 years old, he developed into a very demonic being. Damodar Das Sambhalware and his wife continued to serve their Lord very nicely. Part 8. Following this, Damodar Das Sambhalware left his body. His wife hid his corpse in the house. She asked some Vaishnavas to hire a boat to go to Adel. When the boat came, she packed it with absolutely everything that was in the house, along with Sri Dwarkanathji, and asked those Vaishnavas to take it and all the stuff in it to Adel and give everything to Sri Acharyaji. The Vaishnavas did as requested. When the boat had travelled about 60 miles, only then did she tell of her husband's death. Vaishnavas came and performed the last rites. When the son heard of his father's death, he rushed over there to look for what he could get, but saw that nothing remained in the house. There was a pot full of water which he threw down. Then Damodar Das's father-in-law arrived and asked where everything was and how she would eat. She said, "Well, I will eat what you give me," since it was the custom in their family for a widow to be fed by her relatives. However, Damodar Das Sambhalware's wife neither ate nor drank, and she too left her body. Both of them were cremated together. It was a few days after this that a Vaishnava told Sri Acharyaji the whole story, and he commented that this was a fitting end. Both husband and wife were worthy recipients of the path of grace of Sri Acharyaji, whom they served. Thus concludes Varta 3, the story of Damodar Das Sambhalware, although it truly has no end. Bhav Prakash. Damodar Das Sambhalware left his body. His wife reasoned that since their son was of a demonic nature, he would probably try to get all the worldly goods for himself, and so she hid the body, packed all the stuff in a boat, and sent it to Sri Acharyaji. She let the boat get at least 60 miles away before announcing her husband's death. Her relatives performed the usual rituals for the body. When the son arrived, all he could find was the pot of water. He tried to reach the boat but could not. He beat his head. It is not possible for a worldly person to attain transcendental goods, however hard they try. The wife's father asked how she would survive. His meaning was worldly, and her answer was, "I will eat whatever you give me." It was the kshatriya or warrior caste way for a widow, but her meaning was that without Sri Thakurji's service, how would she be able to eat anything anyway? She regarded her life without Sri Thakurji's service to be totally worldly, so she said she would take the worldly food. But of course she didn't, and she also left her body very soon. She was cremated along with her servant. Addendum to Varta 3, the story of the maidservant. Damodar Das Sambhalware's maidservant was a very accomplished devotee, although her story has not been written separately. Her spiritual form is one of Sri Yamunaji's maidservants, and her name is Krishnaveshini. She was always lost in contemplation upon Lord Krishna's form. In the age of Dwarpa, she had been the great Vidura's wife, who had so much love for her lord. Now she appeared in Damodar Das Sambhalware's home. She was present at his marriage. They had a grace-filled spiritual relationship. She was constantly serving the Lord in her heart and mind. One day, whilst Damodar Das Sambhalware was doing his seva, he thought about going to town to buy a new horse. A bit later on, a Vaishnava came to meet Damodar Das, but the maidservant told him he was in town buying a horse. When he asked her why she had said this, She explained that his mind was indeed in town, and wherever the mind is, the actions of the body all follow. Damodar Das had no answer to this. When the boat was packed with all the Lord's goods, this maidservant was also in there. A Vaishnava came to Sri Acharyaji and gave him the news that Sri Dwarkanathji had arrived there with all his wealth. Sri Acharyaji's eldest son was there present at that time, and he said to his father, "The goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, and her husband, Lord Narayana, are approaching." Sri Acharyaji asked him, "Are you pleased to see all of this wealth?" Gopinathji inquired, "Are you implying that when one desires the Lord's wealth, one falls down, and the devotion is compromised?" Sri Acharyaji replied, "Yes, in my path, that is the way." Sri Gopinathji did have one son, but the lineage did not continue. After this, he told the Vaishnavas to throw everything into the Yamuna river, but to bring Sri Dwarkanathji to him. Since the maidservant considered herself to be part of Sri Thakurji's wealth, she also dove into the Yamunaji and attained the Lord. All the wealth was given to Sri Yamunaji. Sri Dwarkanathji stayed with Sri Acharyaji. Thus was the excellent spiritual attainment of this servant girl. Some of these stories are not easy to understand, and that is why Sri Gokanathji did not write about her in a separate Varta, and why he called her part of the Lord's wealth. Some Vaishnavas inquired of Sri Acharyaji as to why he had kept the wealth which had been sent by Damodar Das, Sambhalware's wife. He explained that he did not keep it because if he had, her demonic son would have made a lot of trouble over it. Wealth is the root of evil, he explained. The wife had sent it, and it was accepted by Sri Yamuna Maharani, and all the worldly strife was thus avoided. They later also discussed how Damodar Das, Sambhalware's wife, had left her body, and Sri Acharyaji confirmed that they were both great Vaishnavas. Thus concludes Varta 3, the story of the maidservant. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Shri Vallabhadisha Ki Jai. Tomorrow, day 10, we will continue with Varta 4. Shri Vallabhadisha Ki Jai Ho.